I'd like to ask you how
Right.
you go train cold callers. What do you tell them to do?
So recently, so there's a structure and approach to it, right? But
Yeah.
recently, what I've tried to, and there's techniques that we go through, but what I'm trying to uh, train reps on, or and companies on, quite frankly, because I do a lot of work with SDRs and BDRs, right? The ones who are doing those calls. And my firm belief right now, especially with the AI stuff, is that that is going to become a roll up under marketing and operations, and it's going to be used as more of like account-based marketing and approach, right? So these kids aren't going to be making calls, but they're going to be pushing buttons and everything else to set up full cycle sales. But where cold calling, I say, is still important, is you actually mentioned it. It's a great place to learn how to sell. So brand new into sales, I still think you need to get your teeth kicked in so that you figure out grit. And second of all, if you think of it more as a marketing function, where it's an impression point. I tell reps all the time, they need to be mini marketers right now. Every single impression, it matters, right? Whether it's a cold call with a voicemail, a tweet, a retweet, a comment on a LinkedIn post. I look at cold calling more as marketing right now than I do as sales.
That's interesting. And I think that's probably the right approach. As I explained earlier, when I was setting 5 leads a day for MLM, it was for all new move-ins to the neighborhood. So I would
Mm-hmm.
say, are you looking to earn a few extra dollars while you're here? And that was my lead in question to sort of set the hook. And then I'd say, well, if you come in for an appointment, I also know the 10 best restaurants in the, I grew up here. So I know
Yep.
every place you can go, and I'm more than happy to help you. And I would get people to, I could set appointments because I learned how to get personal and fill their need rather than mine. Okay, but this is what I did. And I'm revealing this literally for the first time on any podcast. And it's only because I actually respect you. And not a lot of people do, but I'm in that club. I'm in the, okay, no problem. So here's the deal. I had two partners in the t-shirt business, and we would sit around and brainstorm who did we want to sell a shirt to? Not who am I going to cold call? Who did we want to sell a shirt to? And we would target. We'd brainstorm the idea. What do we want to sell them? How are we going to do it? What's the pitch? And from there, we would actually print a sample of their shirt. $500 it cost. Didn't care.
Okay.
Didn't
Yep.
care. Okay. And then I'd go to New York and bang on the door. So it wasn't a cold call. It was a
Mhm.
targeted cold call.
Okay.
Big difference. Okay.
Much. Yeah.
And I don't, when people say shit about themselves, it's only bragging if it's not true.
Mhm.
My closing ratio for targeted cold calls in Manhattan is 100%.
Taking that approach of right, making the T-shirt, and so
Taking the
so
approach
walk
of
me through it.
brainstorming the idea
Yep.
and then going prepared.
Yeah.
And then master salesmanship takes over.
Mhm.
I go and make my
How'd you get
pitch.
that meeting though? How would you get them? So let's hone in on that cold call. What was the cold call? I put that in quotation marks. When you brainstormed the pitch, you came up with the idea, you printed the T-shirt, and put the $500 in. Now, with all that strategy, and you say, "This is the client I want to go to." What's the call? What's the email? What's the one that gets that
Okay, so
person to say,
I'm at their
"Yep,
door. I'm at their
yep,
door literally, and I
yep,
have some kind of a strategy, and I'll show you one. I have one on my shelf. I'll show you that in just a couple minutes. But this is what would
mhm,
basically happen. I would go in and explain the call, explain the t-shirt business, give them
mhm,
an idea, and they would say every time, "Can you make me a sample?" And I would say, "Sure.
and
If you like it, how many will you buy?
mhm,
If you like it, how many will you buy?" And I'd wait for a number. And I'd say, "Okay, well, if you love it, how many will you buy?" And then I would take my tie off, open up my shirt like Superman, show them their shirt and say, "Do you like it or do you love it?" And I'm telling you, it was like magic. Like we had the formula. So we did the STP shirt for Andy Granatelli. We did the Fonzie shirt for Paramount Studios. We did the Alfred E. Newman shirt for Mad Magazine. I just picked places that I loved. We did the copper tone shirt with the
So
girl pulling down the bathing suit.
you just made a point that I want to make sure is highlighted here to the people listening. And I do the same thing. But I want to add, I want to talk to you about scale, but let me get there first.
Okay.
One is, I tell my reps that all the time. Like, first, get your ICPs down, like get tight. Who do you want to sell to? Get your top list of 25 based on demographic criteria. But then what I tell them to do is, before you make one call into that account, I need you to come back to me and tell me why you personally want to work with that company. Not just because they fit a profile. What about it? Like, connect with their values, connect with their leadership, whatever it is. Because my whole contention is once you make that connection of, holy shit, I actually do want to work with this company, then the messaging and everything else kind of takes care of itself, which I love,
in their heart,
right?
not their head.
Exactly. So, but how do you scale this, Jeffrey? Every time I've talked to you about, like, I think our last podcast and all this different stuff, I agree wholeheartedly with all this approach, but I live in the world of the SaaS and the tech kids who are being asked to make $50 a fucking day, do 100 cadences. Thankfully, that's starting to loosen up a little bit here. But how in the world do you scale the give a shit factor, which is effectively what you're talking about?
The only way that you can scale is through proof. In other words, do I want my sales guy to make 100 calls a day or 10 targeted calls a day?
I actually don't give a shit as long as they get 10 meetings, for instance. Like, that's what I care about.
Fucking boom. Okay, so that's what you have to look at from the standpoint of what works and what doesn't work. So I'm going to go with the premise of the appointment or the sale is made emotionally and then justified logically.
Yes.
Love that car. What are the payments? Love that house. What's the mortgage? And so the emotion to logic has to prevail. So no matter who they're calling, they have to determine, number one, what's the situation? Number two, what's the opportunity? Number three, what are the objectives? And number four, what is the proposed outcome? Okay, what do they have to do in order to be able to get that? And if the salesperson is not willing to do that, then go home and watch Netflix and drink a beer like a fucking moron.
Yeah. Or send out your 500 cadences and hope for the best, right?
Yeah. Or quit your job because you're making another $100 a week someplace else.
Yeah.
They'll pay me more money over there to make a cold call. No, they're paying you a pittance. They're paying you to learn. You're going to graduate school of sales by dialing numbers and talking to people.
Yep.
And it's going to determine your resilience, and it's going to determine your outcome in life. Like, I couldn't be happier that I know how to cold call.
Yeah.
I don't want to do them, but man, am I glad I know how.